My name is Seturaman, co-founder of Web3 Compass, and welcome to Build with Stylus. Now, in this series, it's all about helping students and builders dive into Arbitrum using languages you already know and love. Thanks to Arbitrum Stylus, you can now write smart contracts in familiar languages like Rust, C++, Go, and more. That means faster builds, cleaner code, and a much more smoother path to getting your ideas on chain without having to wrestle with Solidity. Every episode in the series is going to be hands-on and practical, and we will guide you step by step from getting your environment set up to deploying your first Stylus app on Arbitrum. Now, this whole thing is part of Namaste Arbitrum, an initiative to grow the Arbitrum builder ecosystem here in India through content, education, and real-world projects. So if you're ready to get your hands dirty and ship something real and fun, let's jump in. All right. Now, in this video, we are going to explore something a little experimental, but something that's super exciting, using C and C++ with Arbitrum Stylus. Now, if you have seen our Stylus intro video, you already know the big idea. Arbitrum made a huge leap with its Nitro upgrade. That was when they rebuilt their entire execution stack on top of WebAssembly or WASM and opened the door for Stylus. Now, Stylus is what lets you write smart contracts in languages like Rust, C, C++, Go, etc., instead of just Solidity. And this is a big deal, not just because it's faster and cheaper, but because it opens up Ethereum-style development to a whole new group of developers. System programmers, embedded engineers, game devs, folks who have never touched Solidity but have been building in these languages for decades. Now, here's the fun part. There is actually a C SDK for Stylus. It's not fully polished. In fact, it's more like a playground rather than a full-blown dev kit. But it actually gives us a glimpse into how smart contracts might look like in C on chain. So in this video, we are going to walk through what's currently possible with that SDK and why it's both awesome and, let's be honest, a little rough around the edges. Let's start with how all this works under the hood. You see, Stylus compiles C and C++ code down to WebAssembly the same way it does for Rust. This works because C and C++ are both mature low-level languages that can be easily compiled to WASM using toolchains like Clang. So even though Ethereum doesn't understand C directly, the WASM engine under Arbitrum Nitro absolutely does. And because Stylus runs WASM natively, these contracts can be deployed right alongside regular Solidity contracts. Same storage, same chain, just a different execution engine. Now, the current C SDK is super minimal. In fact, it ships with just two working examples. One is a basic ERC20 implementation, and the other is a hashing contract that runs the SIP hash algorithm. Now, for the hashing one, it's basically a simple C file that takes in two inputs and uses SIP hash, which is a fast and secure hashing function, to compute the hash of the message. That's it. No storage, no event logs, no fancy ABI decoding, just raw compute. But it's a perfect demo of what Stylus enables. Lightweight, high-performance logic that would be painfully expensive in Solidity. I mean, in Solidity, you can't even implement SIP hash natively without building a custom precompile or calling another contract. Here, we just use a plain old C function. Now, the second example is a bit more complex. It's actually a bare metal ERC20 token implementation written entirely in C. And when we say bare metal, we mean it. There is no Open Zeppelin here, no libraries. Everything from managing balances to tracking total supply to storing minter details and handling initializations, it's all implemented from scratch manually. This contract literally calculates storage loads, handles ABI encoding, manages memory buffers, and tracks all the states, all using raw byte manipulation. But here's the thing. Due to the whole experimental nature of the C SDK, these contracts are not actually chain ready. I mean, it's not audited and it doesn't deploy, but it does prove some points. You can build complex smart contracts in C, and more importantly, you can do things that the EVM just wasn't built for, like manipulating raw memory, doing low level math, or writing your own custom token logic from the ground up. And if you're wondering how you would even compile this, it's not as intimidating as it sounds. We are using something called LLVM, which is basically a set of tools that helps convert C or C++ code into other formats, like, in our case, WebAssembly. And that gives us a clean WASM file ready for Stylus. Now, fair warning, this SDK is still very early. The documentation is sparse, the examples aren't up to date with the latest Stylus deployment tooling, nor does it fully align with how Stylus wants contracts to behave long term. But that's okay, because this isn't about deploying a production ready contract in C. This is more about exploring the possibilities. It's about realizing that thanks to Nitro and Stylus, we are no longer locked into Solidity. We can start thinking about smart contracts as real programs. We can use proper languages, proper tool chains, and unlock performance levels that the EVM simply cannot touch. So, where does all this leaves us? Well, if you are a C or a C++ developer, this is your foot in the door. You can start experimenting with Stylus today, compiling code to WASM, testing it locally, and getting a feel of how smart contract development looks when you remove the training wheels. Now, if you are a Solidity developer, this should be exciting too, because you're not losing anything here. You're in fact gaining another tool in the toolbox. You see, Stylus isn't replacing the EVM, it's actually augmenting it. You can mix and match contracts across the VMs. You can write your core logic in C++ or C for speed and your front facing interfaces in Solidity for convenience. It's all running on the same chain. And finally, if you're part of the broader Web3 community, this is a sign of what's coming. More languages, more power, and of course, more possibilities. So, yeah, the repository and the SDK, it's still very early, but it's real and it sort of works. It's only going to get better from here. So that's it for this episode of Build with Stylus. Keep learning, keep building, and also follow Namaste Arbitrum and Web3 Compass on Twitter for more guides, support, and updates on all things Web3. See you in the next one.